And also tomorrow, Alex Jones is going to be talking to Tucker Carlson. Now, you've probably seen Tucker on many, many different news appearances. He's been on CNN, MSNBC, Fox, PBS. He's written for GQ, Esquire, New York, and he's the founder and editor of the Daily Caller. He was excoriated this week because of his comments about what it really means to have freedom in this country as a business owner, being able to decide who you want to serve and who you want to not serve. Now, of course, most business owners aren't going to turn people out, but in some cases where you've got a wedding photographer who doesn't want to go to cover a gay wedding, he ought to have the right to do that. And if you say that he doesn't have the right to do that, as Tucker Carlson pointed out, that is just nothing but fascism. That's servitude. That's not freedom.
Exactly, because I believe the instance you're referring to is the gentleman who didn't want to make a wedding cake for a gay couple, and they expected that going in. They went to this guy purposely for that purpose, and you know the shenanigans and all the big things that came out of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, they really attacked him in the media for stating what I think is the obvious thing, that if you've got a business, you get to decide who you want to do business with. I mean, if you cut off everybody, you're going to go out of business.
Any restaurant that says we have the right to refuse service to anybody,
that's right,
for whatever reason.
That's right. It's a private business, and if it's a private business where the people who own it and pay taxes and pay for it and have to meet payroll, if they don't have the freedom to make the decisions about how they want to operate, who they want to operate with, then you've got fascism. You don't have a free market. You don't have private property. You simply have economic fascism, where you have token ownership by private individuals, but you don't have actual ownership. Now, he's going to be on tomorrow. I don't know what he's going to talk about, but he's going to be on with Alex Jones live in studio. That's Tucker Carlson tomorrow. Now, we were just talking to Scott in Texas. He had some questions about foreign troops on American soil and some of these urban warfare drills. Scott, did you have anything else that you wanted to say? I wanted to get to Rod in France before we get to the break, but Tucker, Scott, did you have another question?
Yeah, what I really wanted to probe you on is Chinese troops in the U.S. For purposes under the UN, maybe national disaster, martial law. If you were the Chinese and you had 300,000 troops in the United States, how long are you going to play ball with the UN when the time comes to deploy? Are you going to follow the script, or are you going to take advantage of the situation? What do you think is going on in the minds of the Chinese?
Well, I think it's always important for a government that wants to do things in opposition to their citizens, and we see over and over again that the American government sees the American people as the enemy. It's always been the pattern that you use people that are not the citizens to oppress the people. In other words, you're going to bring in a foreign military power. You're going to and then once you get that established, you're going to put somebody over them. You're going to have a bureaucracy like the British Empire did in India, where the entire Indian bureaucracy was made up of indigenous people. But at the very top, you had a few people controlling that. But when you have a war, you want just the opposite of that. You want foreign troops to come in and shoot the people.
Come in, just like we see a lot of times in the drug war in Mexico. They'll bring various agents from the U.S. down to Mexico to assist in those drug busts.
Now, let's go. Thank you, Scott. Let's go to Rod in France. You've been holding for a while from France. Rod, what do you have to say?
Hi, Dave and Jakari. It's always good to talk to you guys. You do a great job. Just want to say, starting out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What I wanted to talk about, in fact, was Sandy Hook and Wolfgang Halbig. Of course, I wish him the very best. I had the opportunity to listen to his podcast from AFP, and it's extremely interesting. I mean, the things that this guy has to say, and what's amazing about the story is that. This guy, he obviously knows what he's doing. I mean, it's his job, and he's gone through all the correct channels to try and get information, and the cover-up just seems extensive. And I just find it extremely disturbing that at the last moment, well, you notice that he hasn't gotten a lot of coverage, as opposed to what I find is a very important story, and I just find it extremely odd that just before he gets on to InfoWars and gets some massive exposure here. With an extremely interesting story that he's had a family emergency, and I wish him all the best on that. And
yes, we do.
Many anthropologists and archaeologists believe that before man even discovered the power to harness and use fire, we were involved in agrarian activities. That is, taking the seeds of plants and then replanting them to produce more. The very foundation of our modern civilization and human culture is centered around the planting and cultivation of edible plants.
Here are some of the amazing deals at InfoWars Seed Center at InfoWarsShop.com.
The Survival Seed Vault by My Patriot Supply features only the finest survival heirloom seeds for a robust and hardy garden, even in the toughest times. We also have starter varieties of the deluxe seed packages for fruit, salad, salsa, peppers, medical herbs, and more.
Go to the InfoWars Seed Center at InfoWarsShop.com.
And remember, the revolution against tyranny is growing. Many anthropologists.
And I'm joined in the studio with Leanne McAdoo, another member of the Nightly News crew. And Leanne, you were at the fluoride meeting in Austin, and we've got a lot of InfoWars crew still down there. Can you give us a teaser for that? Because that's going to be coming up on the Nightly News. We've got a report about what's happening down there.
Well, there were a lot of people that showed up to voice how they felt about the fact that the city of Austin is going to be putting, at the very least, $500,000 taxpayer dollars into artificially fluoridating the water supply. So,
just amazing to me. They do this all in the name of taking care of people's teeth, and yet, you know, there's a big difference in topical application of something, even if it were safe and effective. There's a big difference in the topical application of it and ingesting it internally. You know, there's warnings against that in toothpaste. And how do you control the dosage when you just dump it into the water? A dosage for an adult male is going to be different than it is for a female, for a child that's and even for a child that's developing, that's a fetus. How do you control that? Well, you can't control that if you just dump it in the water. It absolutely makes no sense, even for the people who want to try to argue that it's safe and effective, but it isn't safe and effective. We've seen study after study. Harvard has had several studies, and the most recent one that they've done, along with some Chinese researchers, is to go back and look at multiple studies and try to quantize the amount of the IQ dropping to in the population to the amount of the fluoride. So they're trying to make a, you know, if you add this much fluoride to the water, you're going to get this much drop in the IQ. It's not a question as to whether the IQ is going to drop. It's just a question as to how much.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just amazing, and yet they tax us to do this. They put it in, and you can't get these people to stop. Why do you think that is?
Well, some people there were pretty certain that it's because we're dealing with psychopaths, but you know, I was.
That's an element. There's definitely an element.
I like to give people the benefit of the doubt and say perhaps maybe they just were too busy to actually read the warning label when they signed up to put hydrofluorosilicic acid in the water supply. You know.
Well, there's also the money thing. We can also follow the money, and we know that there was
bribery.
Exactly, there was an abrupt 180 in the way the medical community looked at fluoridation and fluoride. There was an abrupt 180 when the aluminum industry, past executive of Alcoa, became what was then the equivalent to the head of the FDA. And then, of course, they doubled down on it when it became a waste product of the nuclear industry after that started. So what we're taking is we're taking the toxic waste from the aluminum and nuclear industries, and we're paying to dump it into our drinking water. I mean, it'd be bad enough if we paid to dispose it for them, but to have to actually eat it, that's like doubling it down. It's like, you're not just going to pay for it, we're going to shove it down your throat.
The company that we're purchasing it from, the taxpayers are paying for, it says right on their website, you know, don't put into the lakes, rivers, streams, you know, don't let it leak into the air. But apparently there's some magic wand or something that they wave here at the city of Austin that makes it safe to drink.
As soon as it goes on the water supply, it's great. And back in Raleigh, we had some people who had met up on Planet InfoWars, and they wanted to do activism for freedom and liberty there. And the first thing they picked was fluoride. They go down and talk to the Raleigh City Council, and the Raleigh City Council just picks up their glasses and toasts them and says, we're going to keep doing it. We don't care. I mean, it's just amazing, the arrogance, the stupidity, and the corruption that's going on. But you want to talk about something else, too. You want to talk about a story that you've been following on the Nightly News about designer babies.
Right, yeah. Bloomberg actually reported that the U.S. regulators are now kind of weighing the safety of this new technology that's it hopes to eliminate genetic diseases in newborns. So they've done this before where they've already taken like a fertilized egg or something, but now they're actually going to be taking the DNA from one dad and two mothers to create a disease-free child. So they're
disease-free.
Yeah, they hope. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. If they understand everything about DNA, which we ought to be pretty skeptical about that, since it wasn't very long ago that they were saying, yeah, you know, most of that...
junk DNA.
Yeah, most of that's junk DNA, and then it's like a few years later, well, you know, we just figured out what that's for, and it's no longer junk. It's like, these are the guys...
Whoops.
Yeah, we're not building pianos here. Just nail these two boards together. I mean, it's very frightening to see them do that. And of course, the FDA is involved in that because they see us as agricultural products, or what? I mean, it's the drug side of it.
Exactly, we're a biological product. That's here. They've done this procedure before in 1997 to 2003. There were about 30 children that were born with this same sort of technique, and then the FDA came in and said, "This is a biological product. We can regulate it," and so they shut the program down for using it to create humans, basically. So here, this kind of ties in to the young lady, the young girl that's been put in foster care at the Boston.
Yeah, we were talking about that during the break. What she's suffering from is a defective...
The mitochondrial disease, which is the exact disease that this technique here is attempting to eradicate. So here we're seeing where the government is stepping in and saying, in these hospitals, they're taking these children away who have this disease. They're already taking the parent out of it. Actually, the hospital calls it a parentectomy. So they're
really,
really,
wow.
That's their little pet name for it. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you've got one well-respected hospital called Tufts that says that's a physical condition, and then you've got another one that says that's simply a psychological condition. The parents are seeing her condition deteriorating rapidly. They believe that it is a physical condition, but the government steps in, the judge steps in and says, you're not going to make that decision about your child. We're going to make that decision about your child. We know your child better than you do. We have the interest of your child better than you do. And, oh, by the way, you can't even talk to the media about it. If you do, we're going to slap you with a contempt charge.
Right.
Which it's absolutely amazing, but that's where they're headed.
Right, and it just shows how much power the Children's Hospital has, because these people have been treating their daughter for this disease for many, many years. And then just a year ago, she gets diagnosed with this different mental disorder, somatoform disorder. And they say, oh, that's what she's got. And now you need to stop giving her medication for that. And you're over-medicating her. This
is a very, very important case right here, because it brings together several different factors that we see happening. And if you don't think this is going to happen more and more frequently with Obamacare, once the government is paying for your health care, they are going to be making the decisions about it. And we've already seen them making the decisions about it. We already see them dictating to people how much coverage you're going to have, what's going to be covered, forcing you to buy coverage for things that you can't use. Single men having to buy maternity care, for example. And that's why people's insurance rates are skyrocketing by a factor of 2, by a factor of 5 in many cases, why they're losing their insurance. And it's because this has been written by the insurance company. As Alex has said from the very beginning, this is not something that is going to make health care more affordable, more accessible. It's going to make it more expensive and more profitable for the health insurance companies. It's not going to give us more access to it. But what it will do is it will give the government a stranglehold on the healthcare situation, denying people health care, taking children away from families, as we see happening here in this case in Boston. And perhaps if you don't get all of your vaccines, then maybe you don't get any health care.
Right. Well, that's the issue here with these designer babies. If you're, someone out there who's thinking that this might be a good idea for you, the FDA has already said that this is something that they can regulate. It's a biological product. So who's to say that they're going to, if you decide that you want to take care of this biological product a certain way, if they don't agree with that, they can swoop in and say, well, we regulate. This person is, do they have the same classification as, a human? And we see how they treat children and parents now who aren't.
Well, we look at these things, it's over and over again. It doesn't matter what aspect of your life it is, whether it is making healthcare decisions about your child, deciding how what kind of food you want to eat. You can't have raw milk. You can't have organic food because we're going to put those guys out of business because we have politically connected big agricultural firms. We're going to make GMO legal in the United States when it's banned in country after country. And fluoride is another example of it. They're going to dump whatever they want to in our water. They're going to tell us what we can do with our business, with our families, with our food, with our medicine. We are their slaves, and they're going to tell us whatever is in their best interest. So they don't care what we think. We don't get to make those decisions anymore.
Oh, exactly. And that's today when we were down at City Hall, perfect example. You know, there's hundreds of people in there today, and, you know, people are going, presenting their line item, talking, you know, to City Council. They leave once theirs is addressed. Once it comes time for the general public to speak to the godly City Council, all these police moved in to the room, and they kind of set up at different exits. And it was just so like, oh, we need to make sure that the slaves don't get out of hand, expressing their First Amendment right to their elected officials that they put into those seats.
Well, you're lucky they just didn't send you down to a quote-unquote free speech zone like they do at the political conventions, where they take anybody who has something to say, which is specifically protected speech under the First Amendment. They send people down and away from the conventions, put them in cages. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. Anybody that thinks, you know, when I was growing up, people would say, yeah, you know, what do you want me to do? Oh, it's a free country. Do what you want. You never hear anybody say that anymore. No. Everybody knows deep down it is not a free country. We don't have freedom. That's why we talk about it so much, as some Europeans have pointed out.
Shut up.
That's right. That's right.
Well, the issue here that goes on with these designer babies, they have no idea what the permanent change is going to be when they start messing with the human genome. And so far, they've just tested this on mice, and already the mice are showing that they are having breathing problems as well as reduced learning and exploring capabilities. And so this research, of course, suggests that they don't know what's going to happen when they replace one mitochondrial strain with another. They just don't know. And so basically now you're dealing with, you have taken it upon yourself to do this to your child who had no say about whether they wanted to be a genetically modified human. And now, you know, generation after generation, whatever they have, whatever kind of diseases they may produce as a result, is going to continue to be passed down. So there's no...
That's amazing. And you know, we've seen this with genetically modified crops.
Right.
When the French study where they showed the massive tumors on the rats. So it very... just an amazing picture, and yet they pushed back on that and they said, you picked a strain of rats that are prone to tumors and you didn't, what was it? The number of them, right? And it turns out that Monsanto used exactly the same strain of rats and exactly the same number of rats, but Monsanto didn't run the study very long. Monsanto cut off like 1 or 2 or 3 months or something like that. These people ran it for about a year.
2 years.
And 2 years, yeah. And the rats break out in these massive tumors. This is the way they can skew these things to get whatever results they want. We heard that pushback, but we didn't hear what the actual study was that proved to the FDA's satisfaction that it was safe.
Exactly, and it was Monsanto's study.
Yes, exactly. So they do their own study.
Arm's reach study there.
It's a very scary thing when we look at this. And you know, sometimes we have people will contact us and say, what's the big deal? We've been genetically modifying animals for quite some time. Well, it is a very big deal because that's not, when you selectively breed animals, that is not the same thing as transgenic genetic modification, which is what they're doing. You can go in and you can selectively breed animals, and we've seen that happen with livestock. We've seen that happen with dogs, and you can get quite a bit of variation just by selective breeding within the DNA. You can then also go into what's called cisgenic genetic modification. You can actually directly modify the DNA of these animals, and that's kind of dodgy, okay? That's got a lot of question marks about that. But the transgenic is when you take DNA from completely different organisms.
That would never breed normally.
Yeah, you take some DNA from a plant and you put it into an animal, or you know, you cross this with that, and you know,
the spiders with the goat's milk.
Exactly, you get crazy. That's when you get your Frankenstein animals, your Frankenfood, and that's really where we don't know where this is happening. And yet, what is the FDA's concern? The FDA's concern is to shut down heritage farmers, to shut down organic farmers, to curtail farming practices that have fed humans for millennia.
Right.
They want to shut that down, put all of our eggs in one basket, this new Frankenfood, genetically modified, corporate, factory-produced fertilizer stuff. That's where they want all of our eggs to be, and that one thing, that's a very, very dangerous thing. It's very dangerous, and it kind of falls into the whole eugenics plan, because we see with the rat studies, genetically modified foods makes the third generation, they're sterile. They can no longer reproduce. And so this is happening with humans. So if you're sitting here messing now with the human genome, what is to say that you're not creating a totally different species of human in a generation from now, or sterile humans that can no longer reproduce? And who's to say that that isn't their real agenda, bottom line? Anyway, Alex has pointed that out over and over again, that that's what many of them have been saying for a long time is exactly their agenda, to do a soft kill, to do a sterilization, to do a population culling. You've got, they openly talk about it. The people who are in charge of the media, the people who've set up these Georgia Guidestones, the Ted Turners, that they desperately want to get rid of most, if not all, the humans. I mean, you have this whole Gaia movement that was absolutely crazy, that saw human beings as a virus on the planet that had to be stamped out. That's really what I think is behind this. And I think a lot of these scientists do know what they're doing. Again, you know, we talk about, is it a question of incompetence and mistakes, or is it just outright evil, what they're doing? And, you know, when they say that they're going to cull the population, and then you have them doing things that are going to result in sterilization in a couple of generations that we've seen happen over and over again in animal studies, maybe that's just their plan. Right. It's a safe and effective way to slow kill. That's right.
You are watching the best of the Alex Jones Show, weekdays from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. Central. Watch live at Infowars.com/show or become a member of InfoWarsNews.com and help us take resistance to the next level.